Eat for two.
I eat for two also.
Yeah,
All the time.
that's true. When we left off, we were talking about the Ropers. And before we move on to the next show that you worked on, I'd like to get your thoughts on the two stars of the show, Norman Fell and Audra Lindley.
Well, they were both unique, but they're both excellent actors, but very different personalities, and that's what they fit that show so well, I thought. You could practically say that the show was written for them, and maybe it was. It might have actually, somebody might have had them in mind, I think, at the time they were doing it, because they really wrote. They wrote the same kind of characters they were, you know. And both of them were very, you know, like all of the people nearly that I've talked about, they were really professional people. And that when I use the word professional here, I really mean people that come to work knowing that they're working and that they're ready to do their work, and they do it. And those people were really very much like that. They were fun around the place. They wanted to get the job done. And that's something that I always appreciated, you know, just get in and do your work and then fool around if you want, you know, but get the work done first. And that's the way they work. And I thought it was a wonderful show. I really enjoyed it. I think I'm sorry that it didn't stay on longer, you know.
All right, well, let's move on to a show that you worked on in the early 1980s, the sitcom Silver Spoons. How did you get involved with that series?
You know, I don't remember how I got involved with it. It may have been that I had done a number of shows with young people, and Ricky Schroeder was going to be on that. And I think that may have been one of the reasons that I was asked to do it. But that was I mean, I loved that show. I mean, it really, there's some things you get more enthusiastic about than others, you know. And Ricky, by the way, he was such a pro for a kid that was, I guess he was probably 13 or 14 when we started, maybe a little less, I'm not sure. But he was a real pro. I mean, he did his work. You didn't have to cajole him like a child, you know, because I've worked with child actors before. Of course, there's some prohibitions in our state law about how you deal with children, how long you can work them. We were able to follow all those laws and still do the show correctly because he was so good. And Joel Higgins, who was played the father, he really took on the care of Ricky, if you want to say it that way. I mean, they were really, they formed that kind of a team, and he was his father on there, and Joel has just a lovely way of approaching lines, you know. He can take a very sincere line and still give it a little twist, you know, that makes it fun. It was an ideal for the two of them. It was an ideal show, and I enjoyed very much working with it. It was just wonderful to come to work when you have people like that to work with. They always knew what the hell they were doing and everything else. You know, it was great.
What was the show about?
As I remembered, and I'm trying to, you know, we've gone through so many shows, I'm not sure which one is up at the moment, but it was a father-son relationship where the father was, now I'm getting a little bit confused, but it was their basic relationship as a father and son with a new mother type involved, and I can't. I wish I could think of all the details in there, but that essentially was the plot line, and it was how these people could get together and still maintain their own individuality, and it worked pretty well. I thought the show was really good.
Talk about working with Erin Gray.
Beautiful Erin. She's such a beautiful woman. She really is. And she's as nice as she is beautiful. Very professional. She uh, she was always ready for what she had to do. You know, she was just again. I'm so fortunate that I had so many pros to work with. But she was pleasant and lovely to work with, and she enjoyed what she was doing, and really believed in her role there and wanted to make that as real as she possibly could, and she did. I thought she was great for that part.
How about John Houseman?
Now there's the old pro. He was, I mean, he's seen it all, you know, and he's done it all. And he was quite an elderly man at the time that we were starting to do that. And I actually, at times, really felt bad that I had to say, John, we got to do that one more time. And he's go, oh, you have to? Because he was getting tired. And it's physically, it's a tough job, you know, to do a television show like that. Because you're doing everything 10 times. And you're doing it over, and then somebody says, no, we want to change that line, and then you got to remember that line. And he did all of that very well. He'd get a little tired, and we tried to make his burden as little a burden as we could. So, but he stood up to it all, and he loved to get his laughs, and I think he enjoyed it. In fact, I'm sure he enjoyed working on it because it was such a good company, you know. And he was he of course brought all the age and the old strength to it, you know. And it was fun.
Talk about working with producer David Duclon.
Duclon, David was a marvelous producer. I had not known him before that series, I don't think. There was something there. Right around that time, I think that probably was the first time I had worked with him. I had known of him, but our paths had never crossed. And he was the kind of producer that I enjoyed working with. He would produce and bring forth a good script that you could deal with, and then allow me to direct it, and then we could sit and have intelligent notes from him, which was always very helpful to the director. If you can do the show your show, I mean, a rehearsal of it, to the producer who was incisive enough to come in and give you intelligent notes about it. It makes the whole job really work right, and that's the way he and I had a long association on that basis. We felt very good about it. Sometimes people will not do that as directly as he did, but he was always a very direct person, and you get a lot more done that way.
You were also credited as a writer for a few episodes of that series. How did that
I
come
wrote
about?
I wrote an episode on that. My wife and I together. My wife's a writer, and she and I think we wrote 2 episodes on that. I think it was 2. I'm not sure. But it was great fun for me working with her, and I think she is the good writer in the group. I was just helping along and feeling like I was really enjoying it, you know. But yeah, we wrote a couple of shows. I don't know, did we do 2 or 3? I'm not sure, but we did a few.
Did you also direct those episodes that you wrote?
Yes. Which is interesting.
What was that like, directing your own work?
Well, I kept screaming at the stupid director. I mean, at the stupid writer who had given me those lines to direct. I had to be careful because she was one of the writers. No, we just had a nice time with it. It was not uncomfortable at all. It was very good.
How many years were you on that show, approximately?
I would guess that it was 3 years, but I'm not sure of that. It all runs together.
Do you remember why you left?
No, I don't. I think. Oh, I do. I'm trying to think. I think it was the same reason that I left some other shows. I just wanted. I thought to stay alive in the business, you have to keep moving and getting credits. And I think something came along that was that I was interested in, and I think that's the reason I left, because we all got along very well. We had a very nice time. I think it was coming to an end. It would have come to an end very soon after that, and did, I think. So I, liking to work, made the move.
Let's move on. In the mid-1980s, you directed episodes of the CBS sitcom Designing Women.
Yes.
Talk about that experience.
Well, there I was, one guy with a whole bunch of women in there. And people said, "Oh, you're going to have an impossible time." But it wasn't impossible at all. It was each one of them had a very individual personality. I won't say who did what to which, but we got along, and we did it well, and it was it was so well cast and well written that it was just fun to do, And when that kind of a situation comes along, people just fall into place, and it makes it really work well.
What was the show about?
How four women can live together and get along at the same time, and they did. It was very interesting to see how they were able to manipulate it, because they really were four very individualistic types. I mean, they each were very different, and they brought their own personality into it to a great extent, and that made it interesting. Because you had, one of the women was more senior to the others, and so she was sort of played the mother hen, and in real life she sort of did play that, and each of them, if you look back on a show, if you see one, you'll see how very specific they were, and that's what makes a show like that interesting.
Talk specifically about working with each of those four actresses. Dixie Carter.
Dixie Carter was a very strong leader, very well-versed in comedy, and knew just how to do it. She did it very well. And she always sort of played a leadership role, I think. She was, but her character was the leader also, so she could really play herself, in the situation. And that's the way it was written that way.
Annie Potts.
Annie Potts now is a totally different type character than the others, and she had a different way of approaching comedy. She's much more subdued when she would play it, and she handled herself very well. All four of them got along very well. For four women, you'd be afraid that maybe there'd be little fights in between. I never saw any of any note,
Delta Burke.
Oh, Delta is a love. She's really a lovely person. Just likes everybody else, and people like her. And and the fact that she liked them, it kept peace. Anytime there'd be any kind of lack of peace, Delta would be the one who would try to find a way to make everything calm and bring everybody together. And she was just great,
And Jean Smart.
Now, Jean was another lady leader. She very, very much like the first leader of the group in there, but she was supportive. They were supportive of each other, the two leaders, you might say, and she blended in with the same group. I mean, the same way the whole group blended together. It's hard to describe the differences between them, because they both were. They both really had the same sort of approach. They were people that wanted to get the job done. So.
Now, what about some of the other actors on the show? Meshach Taylor?
There's not too much I can say there. He's a fine actor, knew how to handle comedy lines, worked well with everybody, and I enjoyed working with him.
And Hal Holbrook?
well, Hal is an old-time pro. He's great because he really comes in and he knows just where to be on the set and how to do it and how to do the lines, and it's a help to everybody else when you have somebody like that there, because they all respected him for his knowledge and his experience.
Talk about working with the producers, Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason.
Well, Linda Bloodworth is one of the most proficient writers. I mean, she just can turn out scripts incredibly. I don't know, I haven't seen her in a while now, so I don't know exactly what she's doing right now, whether she's still doing it, but she's the type of person that could sit down and turn out a script overnight by herself. And a half-hour script, that's a pretty darn thing. I mean, I'm talking about a usable script. You might look at it and want to change a couple of things, but she made a script that was worthwhile. And she could do that, and she could also work with the other people there. So I think I just respect. I really couldn't believe how fast she was. She could really put a story together fast and know exactly what she was putting into it. And that's a great accomplishment.
What kind of sensibility did they bring to the show?
You know, all of them, or individually?
Just the producers, Linda and Harry.
I mean, they're both professionals. Linda was really the dynamic idea person, and Harry was more here's how you get it done. And that combination, I think, worked very well together. They were very nice people to deal with. So that's essentially it, I think, for them. They both were very hard workers. They did an incredible amount of work that they turned out. And as I said, the way she could turn out a script was incredible. So.
How did they bring the Southern lifestyle of this group to the screen, as it was set in the South?
Well, one of the ladies was Southern, or a Southern background. Which one? I'm getting all my names mixed up. And who are the four names?
Dixie Carter,
yeah.
Annie Potts, Delta Burke, and Jean Smart.
Well, you had Dixie, who was, I think, Southern, and I think, what was the third name?
Delta.
Delta, and Delta was. And I think both of them sort of gave that coloring to it. We didn't go out of our way to make it terribly Southern, but I think it just came out of the way they played their characters.
How long did you work on that show? Do you recall?
No, I don't. I think I did a season on it. I'm not sure, though.
You enjoyed the experience?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're working with pros like that, it's always good when, and also I enjoyed people who have a point of view, and Delta, for instance, would have a point of view that'd be very interesting, and sometimes a little bit different than everybody else, and that's interesting to deal with. Then you're not just falling into the same trap again and again and again.
Well, let's talk about some of the other series that you worked on in the 1980s. Just touch on them, such as Punky Brewster with Soleil Moon Frye and George Gaines.
Punky Brewster was, what can I say about it? I had a lot of fun with it. But it was about kids, and I deal well with kids. And I don't remember really too much about it now. I mean, I didn't deal with it that long, I don't think. How long did I do with it?
I think just a few episodes.
Yeah. So I'm not that, I don't remember all of the nuances on it, but I think that it was interesting. And those kid actors are really fantastic. It's amazing what they can do. I don't know how they learned it. I mean, they so young, but they can handle themselves pretty well.
How do you, as a director, specifically direct kids? Since you say you're fairly good at it, what is your technique?
I treat them like people. I treat them like I treat my own kids. I talk directly. I don't try to play games with them. I just tell them what I'm thinking about a thing and how to deal with it. And they give me direct answers too, and interestingly, a lot of these young people, especially those kids, really knew what they were talking about. They had feelings about how to handle certain things, and they were very often correct, and that was fine with me.
Do you have any specific memories of working with George Gaines?
No,
No.
I really don't. Nothing against George Gaines. I just don't remember anything.
All right, how about the Golden Girls? You directed a few episodes of that. What do you recall from working on that show?
Well, I recall a lot of fun because they were really all a kick in the head, but it was just so funny. They were funny people. They loved to do what they did, and they loved to play that. Each one of them was that was an individual, and I don't know how they got such a great group of people together, but they did. They were really a kick in the head. I can't remember anything specific except it was a lot of fun.
Can you talk a little about working with those four actresses, B. Arthur, Betty White, Rue McClanahan, and Estelle Getty?
Well, again, like I've said about some of the others, they were each individuals. Let's go through them one at a time.
B. Arthur, who you'd already touched on with Maude.
Yeah, and B. Arthur is a leader. She's a strong personality, and the same strong personality carried through in here. It set sort of a tone. It didn't interfere with other people's personalities, but it set a tone for whatever happened. So you start with her, and then you have
Betty White.
Betty plays the sweetheart, and she is a sweetheart. She's so sweet, and it's a great contrast, against those two characters just alone, there. But she does that so well, and yet she knows exactly what she's doing. She's not naive in any way about it, so she knows exactly what she was doing. And then you had
Rue McClanahan.
Yeah, Rue would do a lot of good jokes, and she would watch. She was sort of an observer of the group, I think, and then she'd zing them with a line, and that would be great. I mean, the lines obviously were written for them, but they all contributed also. They all had ideas that we had to kick around and find some good things out of.
And Estelle Getty.
Well, Estelle's a doll, she was just a very sweet lady. She always did her job. She was just great. She knew exactly what she was supposed to play, and she did it. She played it great. So, those are all fond memories, those people. That's great.
Another series was called The Kavanaughs with Barnard Hughes and Christine Ebersole.
Yeah.
And Art Carney as well. Talk about working with that group.
Well, I was just really sorry that show didn't stay on, because I thought it should have had legs. It should have been able to hang on. I don't know I think it needed a little more time. But Barney Hughes is such a marvelous actor. And, every one of them, Barney Hughes and Estelle...
Christine Ebersole.
Christine Ebersole, rather. Those people are great actors. And it was really a story about an Irish family, and which was close to sort of my background. So I don't think it ever had a chance to really get going. That was I think, the problem, because I think it could have made it. I think it was a good show.
And talk about working with Art Carney.
Well, he's always been one of my heroes. He's a marvelous actor, a comedy actor, but he approaches everything very seriously. And I just love that kind of an approach. He was always there to do exactly what he was supposed to do, and he could improve on stuff that we had. As I remember it, he would improve on a number of things that we had, and say, "Oh, let me try saying it this way," and it would work, better. So that's fine.
And another show, Full House, with Bob Saget and John Stamos and Dave Coulier.
It was a very good show. It stayed on for quite a bit, I think, for quite a while. I think I just did a few episodes in the beginning, didn't I? Yeah. It was a very typical type sitcom. Each of the characters, though, in this particular case, were well defined. And that's why it did as well as it did. It didn't have any particular monumental distinction from the other things that I can say it stood out differently. It just was well done.
Let's move on to a few shows from the 1990s, a bit more recent. The Hogan Family, with Josh Taylor and Sandy Duncan. What do you recall from working on that?
Well, we only did one or two of those, I think. I think it was a great idea that I don't think ever got a chance. How many of those did they do?
It had originally been called Valerie, with Valerie Harper.
Yeah.
And then she left, and Sandy Duncan came in, and it became the Hogan Family.
And I really can't remember specific things about it. I do remember the show, and I remember the switchover. And it just, as I remember it, it just didn't really have a chance to get established. I think when you take a show that's heading in this direction and you change it, now try to turn it over this way, sometimes that becomes too tough to exist, and I think that's what happened there. I think if they had taken a clean start, maybe they would have been better off, But that's all I recall about that.
What do you recall of working with Sandy Duncan, specifically on that?
Very charming lady, very, very pro, did her work, great. I thought she was great to work with, so that's as specific as I can be on that.
How about another show, Growing Pains, with Alan Thicke and Joanna Kearns?
I remember it fondly. I don't remember too much about it, other than they were both nice people to work with, and it was. I don't know what happened to that show. I think it just didn't.
Well, do you recall working with Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes.
On that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, he was just a newcomer. He was one of those kids that they brought in. I think that may have been his first show. And I look at him now and I think, my gosh, he's come a long way. Now, he was very good then, but he was without credentials, you might say, I believe. I think that was his first show. He was very good. And now he's a major star, so how good for him.
Well, great. Let's stop right there and change tape.